in London, Kathy Farrington. Thank you very much for joining us. So tell us a little bit about what we're talking about, specifically Internet of Things and taking that to the next level, how you're doing it, how Google's doing it, and what trends you'd like to discuss.
So I think the key trend around IoT is that there needs to be more definition around the ecosystem in general. So at the moment I know everyone talks about the silos that exist, but the ecosystem, so for example the device ecosystem, how do we update every type of device? It has to be consistent. At the moment you need a proprietary software to do that. Right. Just as an example, how do you
Would you want all IoT devices to have sort of a standard upgrading protocol?
Yeah, just upgrade's one example, but it's just a consistent way of interacting and meeting with devices in the same way that you would have in the IT ecosystem at the moment. So you can have any type of laptop, it would plug in, you can connect to it, etc. The Android phone, any applications you can update. With IoT at the moment, that's not possible.
So that's one area, that the upgrade, a standardization of an upgrade. But what other ways do you see us? So I see what you're saying, which is in order for us to take it to the next level, we need to get some real kind of boundaries, rules, protocols. What else do you see as important?
Exactly, so it's across the ecosystem, so any type of device, whether it's AV, physical security, HVAC, lighting, so taking away the application use and just looking at the device ecosystem. It's other things like how do you manage and monitor and configure a device, that could be standardized. The interaction between device and cloud and coming up with a standard schema. So there's a lot of work that Haystack, Brick and ASHRAE are doing to try and align on a schema that can be used across systems. Looking at flow management for networks, so how devices interact with networks, how the type of flow they should be doing, and the behavioral model of that device, so a standardized way of doing that. So it's basically just across the ecosystem, creating a new standard for how these devices operate.
Does there need to be a governing body? And by the way, Joe, I'm having trouble hearing her. I don't know if you are in your cans, but okay, I see. If maybe, okay, we'll just bring it a little bit. That's great. Maybe there might need a little tape, I'm not sure. Here, we'll just, if you don't mind taping you, because I'd love for our audience to be able to hear what we're talking about. Thank you, Kathy.
Is that better?
Well, it just popped out again, but if you there we go. If you might have to, thank you.
Okay, is that better?
That's it.
Yeah, sorry, where did we get to?
So, there may need to be a governing body.
Yes, potentially. So a company like Realcomm or IBCon could certainly play that role. A lot of some of the standards, so device flow I mentioned, that there's new IETF standards that are coming out.
Yeah.
So there's internet standards. ASHRAE are looking at the schema thing. So there's definitely governing, like separate governing bodies looking at different components of the ecosystem at the moment.
So assuming that we tie down some of the loose ends that are presented by the non-standardization of IoT devices and softwares, let's say that gets handled. What's the future? What are some of the things you're able to foresee for us as IoT gains an even greater place in our industry?
So I think the use cases is the sky's the limit, really. Everything from augmented reality to smart office to everything along those lines. But I think the key is once you have a standardized ecosystem, any device can speak to any application, and that's kind of the intention, because then people can create applications without having to be device experts, or you can create devices without having to understand data analytics and the entire ecosystem, which doesn't exist right now.
What does your work at Google have to do with this? So what is Google trying to bring us in this space of IoT?
So I work internally for Google's buildings, so I work on Google's buildings, essentially. So the reason that I'm interested in this is, as an enterprise, it's really difficult to manage the ecosystem at the moment.
Right.
I mean, in one building, we have to update 15 different types of devices in 15 different ways. We have every device we've tested has a different way of potentially using DHCP, as an example. There's no way to standardize at the moment, and there are standards. One of the other topics I wanted to mention was test-driven development. So when you've got a standardized ecosystem, you need a way to enforce that. And so there needs to be a standardized set of tests that manufacturers and companies can use to test and manage the devices. And that way, you're not just asking for it, you're enforcing it and checking it. And also, there's no ambiguity either.
Could Google become a leader in this? I mean, what you're suggesting is a lot of work. It's something that you personally want for your own purposes, but who is going to spearhead this, and how will we get all of these companies to say, oh yes, despite the fact that we work with a completely different programming sphere, we're going to completely adopt standardization. Clearly, even from a security standpoint, what you're saying makes complete sense.
Yes.
But how are we going to spearhead this?
So I think I think a lot of it comes down to the customers. So I'm coming from the customer side of Google, not product side. Other big companies that are here, the customers need to start asking for secure devices. They need to start asking for standardized open protocols that don't vary between vendors and mandating it in specifications. They need to start asking to own the data, which is one of the other aspects. And as soon as the customers start asking, it's going to start generating the interest. We're obviously trying to coordinate with others in the industry, coming to events like this and others. So yeah, I think that's the way it's going to have to move.
Is there any need for yourself as a consumer of IoT that you wish someone would solve? Is there, beyond just the standardization, is there an application or a use that you, as someone from Google, really wishes someone would get to work on?
So lifecycle management of IoT. So at the moment, you've got all of these devices and nobody's kind of managing their life cycle. They're sitting in buildings for 20 years. Nobody knows when they were last replaced. The components of those, often you can't replace major components, but there's smaller components that can be done. Yeah. So everything from provisioning and onboarding to the management. And there's asset management platforms that do a little bit. There's provisioning platforms that do a little bit, but I haven't seen anything that does like an end-to-end life cycle.
A real end-to-end solution. Anything else we should know from you, from Google, as regards to the future of Internet of Things?
No, that's all.
No, that's all? Fantastic. Well, Kathy, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate having you and the company here, and we'll see you later on during the day. Well, that wraps